Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Skill Up. And my name's Emily Sprenger. I'm a learning specialist at NU, and I'm joined today by Dr. Matt Vaartstra. I'm thrilled to be able to offer this session. We absolutely want to be able to partner with very important services that we offer at NU to our students. And so I'm excited for you to be able to learn a little bit more from Dr. Vaartstra today. Housekeeping items. We want you to have conversation in the chat. So please feel free to use the chat for any questions. You can also put questions in the Q&A. We are recording today's session. I think that about does it today, Dr. Vaartstra. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this over to you so we can jump into boost your job search strategies.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone for joining today. Excited to be chatting a little bit more about job search strategies and also just some of the things that we can offer in career services to you as students. Just a little bit more about myself. I do have a PhD. It's in sports psychology, so I kind of combined my two worlds. I did my dissertation on life after sport with student athletes, and so I've kind of worked with the kind of the performance aspect with students on the athletic side, and then combined that into kind of career services. And that kind of created a unique circumstance where I've been working in career services for over a decade, but focused on kind of performance enhancement and different things. And so I'm excited to kind of bring all of those things together to chat with you a little bit more about boosting your job search strategies. So the goal today will be to kind of walk through several different aspects of this. If you're not in a job search place right now, if maybe you're more looking for practicums, looking for internships, looking for different things on the experiential learning side of things, just substitute that word in for job. So whenever I say job, put practicum, put internship, put whatever kind of experiential learning piece into that. The strategies will be generally the same as you're going through it. And what I'll try to do throughout the presentation as well is kind of bring in, hopefully, a perspective for you all as graduate students and what you kind of bring to the table from each of these perspectives as well, and how you can kind of take advantage of your experience within kind of your graduate programs and apply them into the job search setting as we're going through. So there we go. Here is kind of a piece of each of the things we're going to talk about. So I want to talk first about the job search as a process and what that means and how we can conceptualize job searching in a way that's hopefully kind of cyclical and very methodical and gives you the ability to kind of track where you are in the process at any given time so that you can feel positive movement throughout your job search. And I think one of the conundrums that often happens in a job search, again, practicum, internship search, whatever it is there's ruts you can fall into. And so you'll end up doing a particular thing in kind of over and over again. And so how do we make sure that we're tracking progress and showing that there's something positive movement going in your job search? Hopefully conceptualizing it as a process will help with that. We'll talk about organizing and prioritizing your job search, how networking comes into play. And I don't want to spend too much time on networking because I feel like that could be its own thing all in itself. But I do want to make sure that we talk about networking because it's an important component of the job search process. And then we'll break into kind of the 3 tiers of job searching. And this is no trademark on this, patent pending, not really. My kind of methodology for how to time manage your job search process. And so we'll go through resources and strategies that you can use in 3 different kind of tiers that elevate your job search process, hopefully, and tell you where should I be spending my time more or less during a job search process, because usually during a job search, life is going on. Sometimes work is going on, school is going on, other things are going on. And so the time you have to spend on a job search becomes very kind of finite. And so how are you going to spend that time and optimize your use of it? And so that's kind of what we want to focus on with the 3 tiers of job searching. And at the end, we'll talk about tracking your progress. How are you going to track your progress? What's that going to look like? Because like I said at the beginning, if we're conceptualizing it as a process, we want to show progress throughout that. And if we're not tracking that progress, then we're probably going to be, again, maybe falling into that rut, possibly some demotivation going on in results, unless we have that positive movement, right? So we want to be able to track that as well. And so I'll share some resources with you in regard to that. I'll also send this slide deck as well as any of the handouts that I mentioned. I will send those to Emily so she can send them out to all of you after the workshop today. Okay, let's jump into the job search as a process. And there is just a ton of information on this slide, so we'll walk through it, but bear with me as we kind of walk around through the process here. Each piece of the process has kind of steps, tools, and resources. And again, we're going to focus on a couple of these today during this particular presentation. But for me, and if you've ever been to any of the workshops that I've run, you'll know that research is a really primary component of a lot of career development when I'm talking about it with folks. Research can be on a myriad of different things, but I think from a job search perspective, there's three kind of key components that research comes into play on. Researching yourself and knowing yourself, researching your industry and knowing your industry, and researching specific companies. And we'll get into kind of the companies part when we get into the 3 tiers of job searching. But this is where you all bring a unique kind of perspective and experience into play, right? Research is part of what almost all of you are doing as part of your graduate studies. And so this is where you can bring to bear some of your expertise that you have learned throughout your processes of research, and really get to know, well, how am I going to do research on my industry? Where am I going for that information? How am I finding that? Go out and get that information. And why is industry important? It gives you an idea of what trends are happening in your industry. And so if you're going into a job search process, if you know where your industry stands from maybe a job market standpoint, that can help to kind of set the expectations in the right way for your job search. If you do the research and it's like, we're in a really great space, the job market's looking really good, there should be lots of opportunities, that kind of sets you up to say like, okay, well, I can be kind of picky and choosy about, applications I submit, about where I choose to spend my time submitting applications, because I know that there are opportunities out there. You might do some research on the industry and find out that right now, maybe there's some fluctuation in the job market. And that's really true across several different industries right now. And so what does that look like for your industry? Because it sets the tone for, as you're going into your job search, how picky are you about applying to things? Are you kind of digging in really far? Are you kind of being able to cast maybe a broader net? What does that look like for you? A little bit of industry knowledge helps set the tone for that. Sometimes you can also gain good information about kind of when people would be recruiting as well. And so that you can time your job search a little bit better. Traditionally speaking, especially with a normal kind of boots on the ground school with traditional age students, your state institutions and things, your standard operating procedure for recruitment is at the end of each semester typically, right? So you're like October is a heavy recruiting time. February, March is a heavy recruiting time typically for people coming out with degrees at the undergrad and graduate level. And so you oftentimes, if you're in tune with that, then you know when companies might be offering the most kind of possibilities and the most opportunities coming up. Not that they don't recruit outside of that, but sometimes you can, if you know that, then you know that those are kind of the time periods of heavy recruitment, traditionally speaking, in those spaces. And so then okay, like, well, if I'm gearing up my job search, like, let's gear it up around that perhaps, because we might see more opportunities than we might otherwise. So again, researching industries can be important. Knowing yourself, I think, is critical in this process, because when you're going into a job search, you want to know what you want. What is it that you're looking for? And I think that's the very first question you have to ask yourself as you enter into a job search. You might be really gung-ho about your field, really gung-ho about what you're studying, what you're researching, all of those things. But if you haven't figured out how that connects to a career or a job within the industry that you're interested in, that will be a disconnect, right? And so what are you looking for? And I think that's an important question. And you'll see me come back to that question when we start getting into the 3 tiers of job searching as well. So making sure you do your research ahead of time can be important and set you up for success. The next step is that pre-prepare application materials. And I emphasize pre-prepare because you'll notice that 2 steps later, we're going to talk about tailoring those application materials. This has to do with resumes, cover letters, references, any of those types of things. Now, we don't want to spend too much time on this because, again, we're going to tailor those to specific positions later when we actually see a job description we're interested in. We're going to make sure we're matching those 2 things together. But when you start a job search, I think it's really nice to, before you even start looking, if you have a baseline resume, a cover letter that you know how to kind of customize and tailor, your reference sheet maybe is ready, maybe you've even contacted some of your references to let them know that you're going to be entering into a job search so that they can expect to be utilized in that way. That can be really useful. And the reason I say that is because if you go into kind of looking and all of a sudden you find something and you're like, oh my gosh, the application is due in 3 days, but this position is super cool, and you have no material ready, then you're scrambling to put something together over the course of those 3 days. So some sort of baseline so you can kind of quickly tailor application materials will help in the job search process because it avoids kind of that mad scramble for getting your resume ready when you find something cool. So pre-prepare those application materials, have a baseline ready to be tailored and customized in. The next step is kind of the big one, which is finding openings or finding positions to apply to. This is where the 3 tiers of job searching comes into play, and pretty much what we're going to spend the latter half of the presentation today talking about. So we'll talk about that then, but this is where all of your resources and strategies for finding opportunities come into play. Once you've found an opportunity, now you're moving into that tailoring your application materials phase. So how are you customizing your resume and cover letter to match those job descriptions? For me, a resume and a cover letter are checkbox documents. I'm looking at a job description and I've got minimum qualifications, I've got preferred qualifications, and I've got a list of skills typically that I can find in that job description. How is your resume and cover letter reflecting those? How easy is it for them to check the boxes on your resume that you meet the qualifications that they're looking for? And that's how you want to be customizing your resume and cover letter. This is something where career services can help. We're happy to review resumes, help with cover letter creation, all of those things, compare them, cross-compare them to job descriptions as you're going through that. So please feel free to reach out to us for assistance on any of this stuff. But in particular, resumes and cover letters can be helpful to get a second eye on as well. The next step in the process, of course, is applying and following up. So we want to get that application submitted. Once we've got it tailored and looking exactly the way you want it, get it submitted and make sure we're contacting the company. And we'll talk about this again in the 3 tiers of job searching, but anything we can do to make sure that our application stands out from other applications is what we want, right? We want to put our best foot forward. We want to be one of the top applicants for that job as often and as quickly as we can be, right? And so when you start to contact companies, all of a sudden you put yourself on a different level compared to people who are not reaching out and showing that level of interest. And so a little bit of follow-up when you've submitted an application can go a long way. My goal in that is rather than just being a name that comes across their screen in their applicant tracking system from your resume, now there's a voice or something that's attached to your name, right? That puts you in a good space when compared to other candidates because you're the person who took time to contact them. You didn't just submit an application, cross your fingers and hope you heard something back from them. You showed you were interested in their company and in what they're doing. That can help automatically kind of move you up in that application list as far as ranking against other candidates. And that's what we want, right? Once you've applied and you've done that follow-up, you're waiting for interviews to start and you're kind of restarting the process, right? Research might get skipped, pre-preparing application materials might get skipped because you've kind of done those pieces already, but maybe you're researching a new company and then you're back into the 3 tiers of job searching, trying to find opportunities and then recycle the process, right? And so it becomes kind of a cyclical piece that you're doing as you're going through your job search. So hopefully that makes sense. My favorite part about conceptualizing the job search as a process is simply that where are you right now, and how are you going to moving through that, right? What's my next step so that I can get to the next portion of the process, right? And then continue moving around so that I know that I'm making progress as I'm going throughout my job search. Let's talk about organizing and prioritizing your job search. Tracking your progress and managing time becomes critical. We mentioned this already, that time management becomes kind of critical when we talk about job search processes. We have a limited amount of time to spend on job searching typically, and so how are we going to optimize what we're doing? A couple do's and don'ts. I'm a huge fan of spreadsheets. We have a template. I will attach that template when I send stuff out to Emily so that she can distribute it out to you. And I'll actually show it to you at the very end, what that might look like. When you're in a job search process and you've got different companies you're looking at, you've got different jobs you're applying to, it can get overwhelming, especially if you're applying to multiple positions, which you probably should be. That where you're at with the process, what have you done, which job is this that you're getting a call about, right? So having spreadsheets, I think, is important, and it can track where you are in the process, and it can be a nice reflection point to look back and see, oh, wow, look at all the things that I've done in my job search. That's good. We want to show that progress, right? Definitely have your resume and cover letter reviewed by a career advisor or other people in your field. That's also viable. Faculty members are oftentimes good sounding boards for this type of thing as well, if they're willing to kind of help you with those types of things. But that's what we're here for. We're happy to review resumes and cover letters, get your application material exactly the way you want it, so that when you do submit and you spend all this time finding an opportunity that you're really interested in, then you have the material that's going to support you to get you that interview so you can have a conversation with them about that position. Write down what you're looking for in a job or company. Like make a list. What are your top kind of qualities in a company that you want? That goes back to that research perspective. What do you want out of a job? What do you want out of a company that you might be working for? If you're going to be spending 40 hours plus a week working for a company, you want to believe in their product, but you also want to really believe in what they're doing as a company. What's their company culture like? What is their mission? What are their values? And those are all things that can help when you're prepping for resume creation, cover letters, and also interviews. But if you do that research ahead of time, kind of on what you're looking for, you can see how well you match with the companies that you're currently searching through as well. Utilize your network. We're going to talk about this on the next slide. We'll spend just a quick slide talking about networking, but I think that becomes really important. And as graduate students, I think that you have there's some specific things that you can take advantage of, that your network has probably grown a little bit within the graduate kind of studies realm to hopefully be able to take advantage of that as well. I mentioned this already, but don't spend too much time customizing your resume and cover letter before you have specific job descriptions. Get a good baseline done, but then we really want to make sure that we're customizing and tailoring those to each job description. To me, the job search process is a quality over quantity process. There's the method of kind of just like apply as many places as possible and just see who you hear back from. Does that work? I mean, sometimes, but you end up doing a lot of work for very little return. And I'm much more interested in having a quality over quantity mindset when it comes to job applications. And so if you have to spend an hour or two really customizing and tailoring a cover letter and a resume to a particular company, that's going to come across so much better when you're in that pile of people who have applied. Your stuff will make its way to the top because they'll see that they're specifically targeted by you. The checkboxes are crossing over from their job description into your application material. And so then you're going to become one of the top candidates for the job because you've spent the time to customize that to them. It wasn't just a resume that you sent to anybody. This particular version of your resume was only really sent to them because you've specifically customized it to the words that they use, to the order of importance that they maybe have in their qualifications and their job description. And the cover letter is maybe specifically tailored to their mission statement, to their values in their company, and you show how you connect with them, right? So make sure that you get the customization done once you have job descriptions, baseline to start, customization afterwards. Don't spend all your time using just one job search resource or tool. And this is oftentimes I find where people make the most common kind of job search mistake is they're like, okay, well, the tool I like the best is Indeed or ZipRecruiter or Handshake or whatever the tool is. And like, that's where they are. And they just like, it's Indeed, it's every day they're typing in keywords in Indeed. That quickly creates those ruts of like, oh, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. It's a rinse repeat process that I'm only seeing like spinning wheels and not progress. So we want to use all the tools, and that's what we're going to talk about in the 3 tiers of job searching. But we don't want to get lost in just one tool or resource. We want to make sure we diversify the different tools and opportunities that we're taking advantage of. And I'll keep mentioning this because I think it's critically important. Don't forget to track your progress and mark your successes. When you reach out to a company and have a good contact there, when you have a great connection with one of your people that you're networked with, when you fill out an application or customize your resume, like that's a checkbox for you. That's progress. That's movement in your job search. So make sure that you celebrate those successes and track your progress so that you can see kind of that your job search is moving along and that you're taking steps in the right direction. All right, one more slide, and then I'll stop for some questions before we jump into the 3 tiers of job searching and really get into kind of the resources and tools that we have to show you for those tiers. I want to talk about networking. And again, I mentioned I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on networking because there's so much we could talk about here. For me, the 3 tiers of job searching and all of the skills and tools that fall within that, that's how we're going to like really get into a job search. But there's kind of this umbrella that goes over all of those things that impacts everything. And that is the idea of your network. The statistic several years ago was that 80% of jobs are found via the hidden job market or found via people you know that aren't necessarily posted jobs, right? Referrals, internal references, different things like that. I don't know if that stat is still true. Several years ago it was. I would wager that that stat has probably only gone up from where it was. So the idea of there's a lot of power in accessing who you know becomes very important. And so there's a couple of kind of key things that come about with this when you're talking about job searching and your network. Number one is activating the network that you already have. And then number two is how do you build out your network and expand it a little bit larger, especially when you're in kind of a job search mentality. Activating your existing network it's strangely something that people overlook a lot in the job search process. If if your network and the people you know don't know what you're looking for, then they can't really be of assistance to you in your job search process. And I honestly take this back to like the very most basic level of networking. Do your friends and family know what you're looking for? Do they know you're in a job search? Do they know you're looking for the next step in your career? Do they know what that looks like for you? Because if they do, awesome. Because then if they happen to run into something, then they can actually help you with that, right? But if they don't know, they might run into somebody who would have been a great connection for you, but they have no idea that that connection should be made, right? So activate the network that you have and let them know what you're looking for, because that's a key part in taking advantage of the network that you have established, right? This can be my favorite story that I tell in regards to this is in regard to a student that I was working with, and she wanted to get an internship at the Department of Transportation. She was a civil engineer, and that's what she wanted to do, transportation work. And we'd been working together, and I think she was going home for spring break. And I said, let your network know what you're looking for. And she did the most basic form of networking. She told her mom what she was looking for. Literally 2 weeks later, mom was at lunch with a family friend, classic kind of mom with a family friend chat. Oh yeah, my daughter is looking for such and such. Family friend goes, oh, well, I know the director at the Department of Transportation here at the local city. Like, I'll connect them. Lo and behold, because of that connection, student got an internship at the Department of Transportation in that city. And that is how that piece of networking works, right? Does it happen that way every time? No, but I've watched it happen. And so you want to make sure your network knows what you're doing and what you're looking for, because they might run into somebody who's going to be a great contact for you, right? Explore those network connections so you know who to engage with more directly. Maybe there's some people in your network that are going to be more useful to you in your particular industry or job. Make sure you're tapping into those people. Specifically, as graduate students, you've got much deeper faculty connections typically at this point. Utilize those faculty members, utilize your supervisors. Who do they know within the field? Because they often have really extensive networks within those spaces. So take advantage of the fact that you have faculty members, staff members at the institution that are well connected, and especially on the faculty side, well connected, possibly within your field and within the industry you want to go into. So make sure you're utilizing that because that becomes a really powerful part of your network as a graduate student is fellow graduate students, but also your faculty members that have been, had students that are now out in the field working, right? And so there's a lot of potential to tap into on that side of thing as well. Bottom line though, don't underestimate the power of people you already know. If you don't activate your existing network, then growing your network, like, yeah, you can grow new contacts for your network, but that takes time to cultivate. So make sure you use your existing network as well. Several different ways to build your network. And again, I don't want to spend overly amount of time on this, but company outreach directly. So if you, and we'll talk about this within the 3 tiers of job searching, but if you want to work somewhere, find connections there, create connections there, whether that's in their HR office or whatever it might be. Do company specific outreach. LinkedIn is a space to do this, as is Handshake. Both of those spaces kind of function very similarly. Handshake is the career platform that we use within career services here. It's also how you gain access to all of our services, including things like scheduling appointments, attending our workshops, our job board that's in Handshake, all of those things. But it also functions very similarly to LinkedIn. And so you might want to take advantage of that process as well. LinkedIn obviously shows you where you have connections, and you can use that to outreach to people as well. So LinkedIn is a place where you can grow your network. Career fairs, if you get the opportunity to attend any career fairs, whether that's through our office or whether it's a local career fair or a virtual career fair, those are great places to network because all the people there are really there to network anyway. Associations and conferences, and this is where, again, I think as graduate students, there's some level of advantage that you have bringing to the table. Most of the time, you're tied to an association, and that association will typically have conferences. Those conferences are incredible ground for growing your network because most associations, conferences are centralized around the idea of networking and getting to know each other. Obviously, there's a lot of best practice sharing and things like that, but there's a lot of opportunity for networking, connecting within your association, within, especially within when there's conferences and things like that that you go to. I like to talk about informational interviews. An informational interview is really kind of just like a coffee chat with somebody like about their career. So finding someone that's in a position maybe that you're like, oh man, I would love to do that kind of work at some point. I want to just pick their brain about how did you get to where you are? What do you love about your job? What was your career path? What did that look like, right? It's just about gaining information that might help you kind of plan your career in a particular direction or follow a trajectory that somebody else has followed. Everyone gets to the places in their career differently. The path for everyone basically is a winding road. It's not a straight line path. And so your winding road will look different than other people's winding roads. But it's nice to know what that road looked like for people so that you can see, well, what could I be doing? What are my options as far as getting to where I want to go? So informational interviews can be a great way to build out your network and get some good information on your career or what you might want to be doing. I always like to mention happenstance networking. I have another fun story that I won't tell in great detail, but essentially, I had a student who was flying home on a plane and decided that instead of putting her headphones on or watching whatever on her phone or whatever, she decided to strike up a conversation with the gentleman sitting next to her who happened to, as it turns out, work in the field that she wanted to go into. I don't know what happened with that conversation, but it was a fun story to hear that when you engage in, again, what I would call happenstance networking, you never know who's sitting next to you on a plane. You never know who's behind you in the grocery store. You never know who your hairstylist was talking with just before cutting your hair, right? Those are the kind of instances where if you're in a job search mode, pay attention to where you are and the situations you find yourself in, and a conversation around something like that might lead to, something cool. So you never know. So pay attention to maybe what's going on around you from a networking standpoint. Do you find yourself in situations where you could do a little bit of networking that may or may not be useful for you? Either way, you never know what you might tap into if you have that conversation. So again, I think networking is critically important as we get into the job search process, and we want to make sure we're tapping into that and expanding it as much as we can. Okay, I'll pause for any questions before we jump into the 3 tiers of job searching.
Great. Thanks so much. So, and you had just gone through that story of kind of it's essentially it's who you know and who you're chatting with. And it's I really appreciate you sharing those personal stories of just how it's worked for other people, because I do believe that is a part of potentially finding your next job or career. I do have a question for you. It's okay if you're not going to be able to spend enough time on this at the very moment. So we can always potentially think about some other resources to send out for our supplemental materials that we're going to after today's live session. But you had touched on this very briefly in the beginning about knowing if your resume stands out. How do you know if your resume stands out?
That's a really great question, Emily, and it's also a loaded question. I
Okay.
think that the idea of knowing if your resume stands out or not, to me, honestly, it's a multifold question. I'll answer it maybe in 2 ways. Number one, one thing that's important to me when reviewing resumes is you want to like the way your resume looks. If you're not proud of the way your resume looks or what's on there or the content you have, let's get you there. Because first and foremost, if you like your resume, the likelihood of someone else liking it goes up tremendously, right? So we want to make sure that your resume is kind of personalized to you, it's customized to you, it's something that you really like, that you like the way that you're phrasing things, that you like the way that you're talking about yourself, and even just the format and look of it, right? You want to like the way it looks. That gives you, in my opinion, once you like the way your resume looks, that's going to put you up there as well, because other people are going to resonate with that. Probably the biggest piece, though, goes back to the idea of customizing and tailoring your resume. When you can really match the resume to a job description, when you can make those check boxes and how fast you can make those check boxes on a resume, that is what will set your resume apart quickly, especially because your initial review is going to happen within HR. Typically, it's going to be someone who's probably not working in your field. It's probably someone who works in an HR office or talent acquisition office, and they're in charge of doing initial screens before it gets to a hiring manager. they don't know the job very well, but what they do know is the job description. So how quickly can you make sure that you, in your resume, that person who's screening 100 resumes can make check boxes, right? How fast are they making those check boxes on your resume? That brings you to the top of the list, right? It's got to be quick. It's got to be easy to read. It's got to be quickly scannable so I can find those pieces, and it's got to be customized and tailored to the job. And if you can say all those things about your resume, that probably means that your resume is going to stand out in a very positive way.
Thank you so much for doing a high level approach on that. I appreciate that. And then the other one is for the networking, for going to those in-person events. Do you have suggestions of how to find those? Some kind of tips for that.
Yeah, I think it depends. It really depends on your industry. It depends on the field that you're going into. The best place is if you have associations at the regional, national, local, worldwide level that are associated with your industry or with your field, getting connected with those associations is probably the biggest and best place to find those opportunities. They're going to have workshops. They're going to have their own, series of, speakers. They're going to have a conference. They might even have a large national conference, but then localized, special smaller conferences that maybe are more affordable or more effective to travel to. So really getting attached to the associations within your field can be an important place to find those. And that way, that when you're in those spaces, it's already kind of tailored to you, right? You're not at a large networking event where like maybe only a small percentage of the people actually do what you do or are in the field you want to go to. If you're in a focused kind of industry specific or association specific networking event or even just event in general where networking could take place, that's probably the best way to find those opportunities.
Thank you so much. And that's it for now.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Okay. For the remainder of our time together, I want to jump into the 3 tiers of job searching, and we'll kind of work through these sequentially as we go. This, again, to me, is more of a time management system than it is anything else. So when we're in tier 1, we're going to spend some time in tier 1. We don't want to ignore tier 1 just because it's maybe not the best tier. We're going to do some stuff in tier 1. We're going to probably spend more time in tier 2, and we want to spend the most time in tier 3 as far as our job search is concerned. But again, we want to take advantage of the resources and tools in each of these different segments that are possible in our job search process. So we'll run through tier 1 being kind of the meta search engines. We'll talk about what those are and how to use them. Tier 2, targeted job search engines and industry specific resources, which conveniently we did just talk about a little bit. And then tier 3, we'll talk about my favorite method of job searching, which I just call the targeted job search. How will we execute on something that's a little bit different that maybe changes our mindset on the job search process when we get to tier 3? We'll start in tier 1. Tier 1 is where I typically find most people sit. Most people are almost always utilizing tier 1. I just call it the meta search engines. These are the Indeeds of the world: ZipRecruiter, Monster, Career Builder, Glassdoor, Simply Hired. There's a whole slew of these places where so many job opportunities get posted. If you're on Indeed, Indeed and ZipRecruiter are my 2 favorites if you're looking for my personal opinion. Indeed and ZipRecruiter, while they're still they're meta search engines, they're going to give you way too many results no matter what you type in, which is my primary issue with meta search engines. But they give pretty decent results and really span like a pretty good breadth of different opportunities across those sites. But again, any of these sites are viable kind of tools within tier 1. Oftentimes you'll find a lot of crossover because if someone's posting on Indeed, it's probably getting picked up by ZipRecruiter, Monster. They're probably posting across to multiple of these, but not always. Some companies only post on 1 or 2 of these, not all of them, right? So that's something to keep in mind, is even diversifying your resources and tools you're using within tier 1 could potentially be useful for you. Again, we want to spend some time here, but probably the lowest amount of time out of any of our tiers. Oftentimes, all this consists of is typing keywords into a search bar and seeing what pops up, and then you're scrolling. And then the problem is that you might just end up doom scrolling through postings, and so then it's not super useful because if you're on Indeed, typically what I find is it doesn't matter what you type in, an accounting job will pop up. There will be an accounting job there, despite the fact that your industry has nothing to do with accounting and your keywords you typed in have nothing to do with accounting. An accounting job will be there. And that's what becomes frustrating about using these, is the results they're okay, but you're always going to have to go through a whole bunch of different possible postings to find something that's actually useful. Now, these do work. They would not be huge search engines that make lots of money and get people if they didn't get people jobs. So companies do use these to find talent, and the talent uses them to find jobs. And those two things happen. People find jobs through these sites, which is why we want to use them. We just don't want to get lost in them potentially. The biggest kind of pro that I see for using these is that they become really good research tools. They're really good for gathering data. Who's hiring? What are the job titles? Because oftentimes the problem with job searching, especially when you're using keywords as part of it, is I'm not really sure what title to search for. As you start to run a search, you'll start to pick up on the fact that different companies almost always all use different job titles, unfortunately. And so you're like, oh, well, this is the job title I'm looking for. And then you realize, well, there's no one that's looking for that particular position at these companies, even though I know they would hire people like me. They probably just call it something different. And so as you're searching, hopefully you can use some keywords that would be found in maybe a job description rather than a job title. And then you can start to pick up on, well, what are the different titles that are in my industry? What do those titles look like so that I can start being even more specific in my search terms? The other thing you might find is where are those jobs located? Are you looking to move? Are you not looking to move? But are there jobs located in different geographic regions? The best part about this is this research that you do here becomes informative for tier 3. When we get up to tier 3 and we talk about the targeted job search, we'll talk about how you want companies that you want to work for. This is where maybe you don't know what companies you want to work for. A little bit of job searching on one of these larger search engines can start to inform you of, well, who are the companies that are typically hiring in my industry? And then you can go and do your own research on those companies to see if you're interested in potentially targeting them a little bit further when we get to tier 3. Obviously, these are great for finding large amounts of different positions. There's a lot of opportunities that get posted on these, a ton. And so again, you might end up having to doom scroll a little bit to find those, but there's a lot of options there. It can be hard to get those search terms correct. And so you might be different search terms each day or every other day, trying to figure out what search terms work best in your field. And again, it's always challenging to sift through a lot of postings. But again, people find jobs this way. So don't discount the fact that people use these and use them successfully. We still want to be doing these, using these resources. Just don't get lost in this particular area, right? And again, use it for research. Tier 2 is longly named targeted search engines and industry-specific resources. And so Emily brought this up a little bit in kind of the questions that were asked is, how do you find, specific networking opportunities? We'll ask the same question here. How do you find specific job search boards? How do you find resources that are useful in your field? And this is where tier 2 comes into play. And we'll talk right away about association job boards. If you have an association, whether that's a certifying body, a licensure body, just an association that gathers people together, that's part of your field, these are the places to be looking. Most associations have their own job board. And the best part about association job boards is if you're at the Association for Applied Sports Psychology job board, which is a group that I've been a part of for years, their job board only has applied sports psychology jobs because that is the Association for Applied Sports Psychology. So no one else is going to post there, right? They know their audience that they're going to get when they post to that. And so that's why they're going to post to that particular place. So the nice part about that is all your opportunities are very tailored and targeted towards your industry. But the con then on the other side, right, is there's going to be limited postings there because now you've limited your kind of opportunities down to a very specific field. Is that good? Probably, because you're going to see higher quality postings that actually are meaningful to you, but you also can be frustrating because all of a sudden you go from having thousands of postings to having tens of postings possibly on a particular site. So you just want to keep in mind what are you going to get as a result of that, and just make sure you understand where that scope is going to lie. Obviously on your meta search engines, large amount of opportunities available, but it's difficult to find the ones that actually make sense for you. On these association job boards or more specific job boards, smaller amounts of opportunities, but usually each of them is going to be highly relevant to you, right? There are industry-specific job boards out there. This, again, really depends on your industry, but if you're going into ag, agcareers.com is your go-to. Agcareers.com is where people go to post ag jobs. If you're going into higher education, higheredjobs.com is the place where you go. You want to be on higher ed jobs. That's the one where you're going to find your opportunities, right? So do searches for your industry specific job boards. And again, that's really dependent across industries. Some industries have really robust industry specific job boards. Some don't so much, and they rely on other sources. And so you kind of figure that out for your industry as you're going through. A couple more generic tools here that I put in tier 2, LinkedIn and Handshake. LinkedIn has a job board, Handshake has a job board, but they have the added functionality of some sort of networking components, right? They also have the added bonus of if you tell them to, and you tell them what you're looking for, both LinkedIn and Handshake do this. And if you think about it, actually, Indeed and ZipRecruiter, all the meta search engines do this as well. So you can take advantage of this over on that side of things as well. If you tell LinkedIn, Handshake, what you're looking for, they'll send you like a weekly job brief, right? Like, here's the new postings that have come through in this particular area, right? So take advantage of that because that helps your job search process. You probably still want to be searching within those sites as well, but they'll send you a little job blast email of here's the newest postings in this. Handshake, you could actually follow specific companies, and then Handshake will send you, like if that company posts something, Handshake will ping you and say, hey, company that you followed has posted a job, you might want to check it out. So that's little tools you can take advantage of that, in my opinion, take these particular search tools a level above the tier 1 tools. And so we maybe spend a little bit more time here. If you are looking for nonprofit jobs, idealist.org is your place to be. Idealist.org is, there's other sites out there, but idealist.org is the best one if you're looking to kind of crack into the nonprofit industry. That's where a lot of nonprofits post their opportunities. If you're looking to get into government jobs at the federal level, usajobs.gov like is where you have to be. Every federal job must be, in fact, posted on usajobs.gov, and the hiring process will run through usajobs.gov. If you are looking on the federal side of things, check in with us. Their process is a little different than everybody else's. Their resumes look a little bit different. Their process through usajobs.gov looks a little bit different. They use different words typically than you'll find to describe their job search and application process. So we're happy to help on specifically the federal job search process. So just be aware that usajobs.gov is your place for that. And it's just a little different than what you might be preparing otherwise, all the way down to how your resume looks and reads is a little bit different on the federal level. So we're happy to work with you on that on a one-on-one basis as well. You can use Handshake to schedule appointments with us, and we can chat with you through some of those processes or any processes outside of that as well. Okay. Let's see, other pros and cons in tier 2. Again, great for finding specific positions, could have kind of limited opportunities. And then exactly what Emily kind of brought up from a networking standpoint is a lot of these tier 2 resources, Handshake, LinkedIn, associations, industry-specific job boards, they have networking opportunities almost built in. LinkedIn and Handshake obviously kind of naturally have that connection piece built in. Associations have all of their conferences, their events, and all those things where you could potentially connect with people. Some of those associations will even just have like member lists, and you could just be like, oh, this person seems cool, I'm going to reach out to them. In Handshake and LinkedIn, there are often company contacts that are associated with companies. So if you're looking, like, I really want to work here, who would I get in touch with to try to make an impression? Handshake has a list of public-facing contact information for most companies. You can actually check that out and see who is listed as a public contact within Handshake. So we have like those networking opportunities that are built in. Okay, let's jump into tier 3. Tier 3 is what I call the targeted job search. And this is where I would advise that you spend the most of your time job searching. So if you've got an hour a day, I'd probably be spending, I don't know, like half an hour on your targeted job search, 20 minutes on some of those tier 2 sites, and 10 minutes on some of the other, however that works for you, right? Break it up kind of time-wise, how that functions best for you. I like the targeted job search because it almost flips the traditional job search process, or what typically people think of as the job search process, almost on its head. We're going to take an opposite approach now in the targeted job search. And I say that because rather than going to a website, doing a keyword search, going to a networking event, trying to talk with people, and not knowing maybe where you're talking to people or what opportunities you're going to find, now we're going to attack it from the other side. Answer the question, where do you want to work? And let's go out and find those opportunities that are very specific, that are very direct at a company that you want to work for. So I often will tell people create a top 10 list. And 10 is an arbitrary number on my part. 10 is just a nice number. It can be longer than that. It could be shorter than that, but then you're limiting yourself a little bit, right? So I like a top 10 list. What are the top 10 companies you want to work for? And don't hold back on this either. What are like the top companies you want to work for, even if that's a long shot? Let's put them on the list. Let's see what opportunities are there, what kind of connections you can make, right? And then, work your way down from there. All the companies, though, hopefully are companies that you would be excited about working for. I like this for a multitude of reasons, but one of them is when you're excited about a company and it's on your top 10 list and you're doing the targeted job search process that we'll talk about here in just a moment, when you start to make your application material, when you sit down to customize your resume and your cover letter, you'll be motivated to do those things because you're going to be excited that you found an opportunity at a company that you really want to work for. And so I find that when you take this approach, your application material improves, your interviews improve because you're already excited about it. It's not just an opportunity you found that you got excited about through reading the job description and stuff like that, right? This is an opportunity at a company that you have on your list. This is your top 10 list and you want to get a job there, right? That can come across very positively in your application materials and can be highly motivational in your job search process. How do you create that top 10 list? That's why I talked about earlier, even in tier one, as you're doing a search, maybe you don't know the companies that you might want to work for in your industry. That's fine. Start to do that job search. And as you come across like consistent company names, so this company keeps popping up and they seem to have really interesting things. Maybe the jobs you're seeing are the required 10 years of experience that you don't have, but you're still interested in those positions. Typically that company will have something at the level you're looking for. It's just a matter of figuring out when they post those or when that's going to happen. Add them to your list, right? Do the research, go to their website, check out their mission statement. What are their values? What's their company culture like? What's their product that they're selling? Who are their clients, right? What all of those pieces of the puzzle, right? You want to like the company you're going to go and work for. You're going to have to spend a lot of time there. And so make sure that they fit with what you're looking for. That creates, again, motivation within your search. The other part that happens here is now that you're on their website, small companies maybe don't have this as much, but any medium to large size company is going to have their own job board on their website. In my opinion, this is the first place that positions get posted. Why? Because if a company is going to post an opportunity, if they put it on their website, they know that the only people who are finding it are people who are actually interested in their company, right? You're on their website, looking at their company specifically, seeing what postings they have. So the first place a company will probably post is going to be to their own website. Probably almost immediately after that, but very closely after that, it's going to go out to all the sites because they want to try to gather as many great applicants as they can. But if you're on their website, you're probably getting kind of the first look information about those opportunities. That's the best place to be, right? Because now, again, it targeted, it tailors it down. You're not looking at Indeed, where that company may be one of 100 that you're looking at on a list of jobs. Now you're looking at just jobs at that company. So you're just searching through to see if they have the right position that matches with what you're looking for. And then I suggest one of two different avenues that happens. You've done your research, you have your top 10 list, you've on their job board, you've done your research, and you find a position on their job board. Awesome. So you're going to work on your application. You're starting to customize it and tailor it to them. Reach out, contact them, whether that's someone in their HR department, which is typically the direction that this is going to go, or someone within the department that you would work in, maybe a hiring manager. If you have a name of someone you can reach out to, that's awesome. In the job postings, sometimes they'll have contact information you can find. If not, that's typically where I'll go to the HR number. Like you can typically find HR contact information, jump onto their website, find an HR contact person, reach out. Hey, really excited to be potentially applying at your company. I actually found a job posting recently. I've been looking at your company for a while. I'm working on my application for it right now. Just wanted to let you know you'll see that application in the next couple of days, right? That could be it. That can be the conversation. If that feels awkward to you, or if you want a reason to be on the phone with them, come up with an innocuous question to ask them about the application process. Do you prefer a 1-page or a 2-page resume? What format do you prefer your documents in, Word or PDF? Typically we're going to send them in PDF, but you're just asking a question as an excuse to be on the phone with them because you want your voice and your interest in the company to come across when your name pops up on their screen in their applicant tracking system, right? You want to be that person who contacted them, who reached out, because how many other people are doing that? The answer is not very many. So you want to be one of those not very many people who set yourself apart right away. The other way that these conversations or that this process goes is you have your top 10 list, you're on their job board, you do your research, and you're not really seeing any positions that directly are looking like what you want or what you fit with. Maybe there's positions that are underneath that or above that, but you're not really seeing that perfect spot for you within the company. But you know they would hire people like that based on what they do and that type of thing. Reach out. Find a person, probably again, it's going to be in HR, but it could be someone in the department you might work in if you have a contact there, or if you can find a contact there. The best part about the HR offices is their job is to find talent for their company. And so they really, most of the time, probably I'd say 90% of the time, they don't mind fielding those phone calls. In fact, they welcome those phone calls because they want to find talent for their company. And if you're going to come to them, you're kind of doing their job for them. So they're happy to field those conversations most of the time. So if you don't find any postings that really fit with what you're looking for, reach out anyways. Have that conversation. Hey, I'm really interested in your guys' company. Here's kind of what I would like to be doing. I don't see any postings like that on your job board right now. Do you know when you might be hiring someone like that, or what your timeline might be from a hiring process for something like that? Ask those questions, because now on your tracking sheet, which I'll show you in a second, when you are looking, you're like, okay, well, they said 2 weeks or they said 2 months, right? You'll get a time frame from them about, well, when might they be hiring in my kind of area or at my level within the company. That becomes kind of your timeline for follow-up, right? Now I know to be back looking for them in another couple of weeks, or following up with them in a month or two to see what that looks like, right? And your timelines might be that long. It might be anywhere from, oh yeah, next week check back, to, oh, you know what, in a couple months we might post something like that, right? So you might get a very big range there. The other thing that might happen is they might say, you know what, we really don't know. We're not really hiring for that right now. We just filled out that team or whatever it is, and I don't know what that looks like. Ask the final question of, well, do you know anyone else in this area that might be hiring for someone like that? HR people are well connected. Sometimes you can get a reference over to somebody that might be able to be a new company that you can research, throw them on your top 10 list and restart the process, right? So that becomes your cyclical process of, now I've got a new company on my top 10 list, do the research, reach out, do the contacting, and make sure that you're setting yourself apart, right? I love this method of job searching because it targets to companies that you want to work for. You have direct stages, and have you done your top 10 list? Have you done the research? Have you contacted them? Have you applied with them? Rinse, repeat, right? You have a process within the process to kind of follow to see kind of where you're at with any of these companies. It creates connections within the companies for you because you're actually reaching out and having those conversations. But again, it's very targeted and tailored. And instead of you waiting for something to come to you, you're going out and trying to get something that you want. And I like that mentality in a job search process. All right, I have two more slides, and then I'll hopefully have time for just a moment of questions. I'll go through this one pretty quickly. Tracking your progress and building confidence. Here are two examples, and these are very simple, just Excel documents, Excel sheets. And again, I'll send them to Emily so she can send them out, that you can use to track your search. The first one is kind of a job search tracker. So what are the companies that you're tracking? Maybe your top 10 list. The second one down there, the second table, is more like jobs you're actually applying to. So here's the job title I'm applying to, all of the information about where I'm at in the job application process. So one of them is more tracking a search. The next one is more tracking actual applications that you're submitting. But again, this will help you to be able to monitor and see what progress have you made on your job search, and be able to celebrate those successes and progresses that you've made. In summary, utilize all your tools and resources to optimize your job search, right? We want to make sure that we stay motivated in our job search process. Utilize your network to expand and access that hidden job market. Use your large search engines to, that's your starting point for research and for opportunities that you're looking for. But make sure you're also going into those tier 2 sources. What are your industry specific resources? What are your associations that are associated with your industry and with your field? How am I taking advantage of those? Create a targeted job search process. If you've never done anything like that before, take a crack at it. I really think that it changes the job search mentality and process. Make that top 10 list, do your research, be on their job boards, and pick up the phone. Emails work. You can email, that's fine. But how much is that going to set you apart from other people who maybe also are doing that? It's pretty easy to do. If you pick up the phone and you're in touch with them when you can be, that I think makes the difference, right? The job search process can take a while sometimes. The job search process can be rinse, repeat, right? There's a lot of stuff that could be demotivating in the job search process. Celebrate your progress, track that, be impassioned towards the companies you're applying to, because that will build your confidence and your motivation as you go through. Questions? Also, here's all of our contact information. If you want to reach out to us, please feel free to do so. If you're a student with an nu.edu email address, you can use your single sign-on information to log into Handshake. You can find all of our events, schedule one-on-one appointments with us through there. If you're a student with an NCU email address, reach out to us. We have a specific process that you have to follow in order to get into the system. We can send you very specific instructions through email that will get you into the system, and you'll have access to all of our resources as well.
Yes, absolutely. And Dr. Vaartstra, I do want to say thank you so much for diving into this for us today in terms of the job search. And I think you're right. There can be demotivating components for searching for a job. So you're right. Tracking your progress and celebrating your wins as you move through. Absolutely. Very helpful. You said something that made me think, and if we do have any questions, feel free. We have just about 2 minutes, so feel free to pop them in the chat. We have a couple people saying thank you in the chat as well. But you mentioned that I've never thought of asking a company or someone in HR, do you know other companies who are looking for this kind of role? And I feel like another thing that you've taught us along the way is really just advocating for yourself, right? I feel like when you're in the job search mode, you're kind of at the mercy of everyone else, when really like you should be having moments of like being empowered in your search and taking control of what it is that you're looking for. So you never explicitly said those things, but those are some of the things that I heard as you were delivering.
I love the words you just used to summarize that. Was perfect. I love it.
There's a couple of things in case someone said thank you for all the amazing topics you've mentioned, definitely putting this into practice. I want people to know, I want our NU students to know that Career Services is a resource for our students. And for students to use the services in Career Services, this is not going to cost you additional money. This is a service for you as a student. So if you have not set up your Handshake account, or you haven't taken a look at their website, I will absolutely include them as live links in the follow-up, because we had about 130 people register for today's session. So not everyone can make the live session, but they are absolutely interested in ways to boost their job searching skills. And I think for sure today you covered quite a bit of information. If you do have, someone had mentioned, yes, I can give the information for whether you have an NCU email or an NU, and I'll make sure to confirm that with Dr. Vaartstra before I send it out, so I make sure the correct information is going. And then we can tune up together there. Oh, also very important note in the chat. Yes, you also have access to Career Services for your lifetime and post-graduation as NU students. Thank you so much, Ashley, for that very important information that I almost glided over. So without any more information to cover this evening, I'm going to say thank you all, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.